Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you're all doing well. We are going to get back to interrogatives in the next lesson, but for this lesson we're going to mix it up a little bit. So I'd like to go over something that you learn very early on in French. Probably one of the first things you learn is comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? How are you? Oftentimes students are just asked to accept that comment allez-vous means how are you? But if you're curious and you analyze things word for word, that might not sit well for you. So we're going to talk about that. That's kind of the purpose of this lesson. Before we get to that lesson, I'm going to ask you, how would you say in French, I am fine? So if you're a native English speaker, you have the tendency probably to force the verb to be into this expression. So you might start off saying something like, I am fine, je suis, if you've learned the verb être, je suis, and right away your French teacher will say, non, 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 je suis, non, non, non. So what is going on here? Well, if you want to express the idea of being fine or being well, it's expressed with the verb to go in French. So for example, if I want to say I am well or I am fine, we can use well. In English we use well and fine in this situation interchangeably. I am fine, I am well. If you want to express that idea in French, you can't use the verb être. You have to use the verb aller. The way the idea is expressed in French is literally I go well. I go well. We're missing our period there, so let's go ahead and put it in. Okay, so I go well. How do you say I go well in French? Well, it's the verb aller, je vais, and then well is bien. Je vais bien. So maybe you just memorized je vais bien. Maybe you haven't really thought about it, but what you're literally saying is I go well. Why are you saying that? Because that's the way the idea is expressed in French. We don't literally say I am well, we say I go well. Je vais bien. Je vais bien. Je vais bien, merci. So how about the question, how are you? How are you? Okay, again, this is probably one of the first things that you memorize. Instead of saying literally, how are you? You have to say, how go you? How go you? Why? Well, that's just the way it's expressed in French. So the question is how, comment, and then the verb aller would be aller with the Z, and then of course the subject pronoun vous. And when you have this inversion, we always insert a hyphen. So comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? Notice the liaison here. Comment allez-vous? And notice also that there's a space here. In French, it's obligatory to put a space between the last letter and the question mark. So maybe you've seen that before and thought maybe it was some kind of a mistake, but this is French punctuation. Okay, so comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? How are you? Let's try another one here. If I want to make the statement, you are well, I can't use the verb être in French. I have to use the verb aller, a form of the verb aller. So we're going to go with the informal you here, which is the tu. So you would literally say you go well, which is tu vas bien. Tu vas bien. That's just a statement, which means you are well. Tu vas bien. Literally, you go well, but the meaning when you translate it to English or when you interpret for someone, you would say you are well. In other words, what does tu vas bien mean? It means you are well or you're well. How about the question? How would you ask someone, are you well? Are you well? Let's use the tu here. And we're going to use the intonation method. So you don't change anything here. You just remove the period and add a question mark. So if I want to ask someone, are you well? Are you, in other words, we might say in English, are you well? Are you okay? Are you fine? It has to be in French, you go well, literally. So, tu vas bien? Tu vas bien? So someone might ask you, are you okay? Tu vas bien? Are you well? Tu vas bien? Okay, so let's try something else. How would you ask the question, how are you? How are you? Using the subject tu, the informal you. So how, remember, is comment. And then with the tu, we have to literally say, how go you? Notice I didn't give you the hint here. So it's how go you? Comment vas-tu? Comment vas-tu? I'm fine, or I am well. Again, I didn't give you the hint here. You can't say you can't use the verb to be. You have to use the verb aller. So this is something you already know, right? Je vais bien. Je vais bien. So now how do you think you would say he is fine or he is well? Again, we can use fine and well interchangeably here. He is fine. There's no hint, no written hint, but I'll give you the verbal hint. The verbal hint is you have to say literally, he goes well. So he goes, il va. And then of course, bien. Il va bien. So if you're talking with someone about your brother and they ask you, well, how's your brother doing? You can just simply say, oh, he's fine. Il va bien. Il va bien. She is fine. Same thing. We have to use the verb aller, not the verb être. So we would say, elle va bien. Elle va bien. She's doing well. She goes well. Literally, she's fine. Elle va bien. How would you ask the question, how is he? So remember, you have to literally say, how goes he? How goes he? Not how is he, but how goes he? So using the verb aller, comment va? And then we have il, but you may have seen this already. There's this T that we have to insert between va and il for the sake of pronunciation to separate these vowels. It doesn't mean anything at all in English. It's just for euphony, to sound good. And of course the T is separated by the va and the il with hyphens. So the question is, comment va-t-il? Comment va-t-il? Comment va-t-il? How is he? Literally, how goes he? The T has absolutely no meaning in English. Comment va-t-il? But it has to be there in French. Okay, and it doesn't have any meaning in French. It just serves to separate these two words for the sake of pronunciation, to keep the vowels from running together. How is she? It's going to be a similar format. Instead of the il at the end, you would have the elle. So how goes she? Comment va-t-elle? Comment va-t-elle? Comment va-t-elle? Remember, the answer is she is well, is she goes well. Elle va bien. Comment va-t-il? Il va bien. How about we? How would you say we are well or we are fine? Again, the verb aller. So we have nous, and then allons, nous allons bien. We are well, we are fine. Nous allons bien. And then finally, they are fine. Ils vont bien, or elles vont bien. Ils vont bien, elles vont bien. Okay, one other thing related to aller bien is the negation of that. If you want to tell someone, I am not well, in English we often add in the word doing, I am not well or I'm not doing well. Now, instead of using negation, which you might be familiar with already, the ne pas, in French, we don't use the ne pas, we simply use a word, a different word. Instead of bien, we use mal. Mal means poorly or badly. So the way that you express the idea, I'm not doing well, is you literally have to say, I go poorly, or I go badly. And that expression, of course, in French is je vais mal. So if somebody asks you, how are you doing? And you want to say, I'm not doing well, you can simply say, oh, je vais mal, je vais mal. Literally, I go poorly. When you translate this or interpret it back to English, the common translation or interpretation is, I'm not well or I'm not doing well. So along those same lines, if I wanted to make a statement, you're not well, you're not doing well, using vous, I would say vous allez, and then of course we would use the mal. Vous allez mal. Vous allez mal. Let's say you ask about my brother and I want to tell you he's not well, he's not doing well, maybe he's sick, something like that, or having a bad time, a hard time with something. If I want to say he's not well in French, I literally have to say he goes badly or poorly, which is mal. So we have the expression il va mal. No, il va mal. He's not well. Again, he goes poorly, but when you translate it to English or interpret it back to English, he is not well, or he isn't well with our contraction. Same thing, she's not well. We literally have to say she goes badly or she goes poorly, which is elle va mal. Elle va mal. Okay, well that's it. The most important thing is remember to express well-being. Instead of the verb être, we use the verb aller in French. If you found this helpful, I would appreciate it very much if you'd give it a like. To continue learning and go on to the next lesson, click on the video that appears here on your screen. See you soon. À bientôt.